The Principal Skills Blueprint, Chapter 6, is where our discussion starts today. And we really want to start the discussion by putting a framework around this principal skills blueprint and why this is applicable in the HR and OB world. Based upon the U.S. Department of Labor's strategic plan, there are many skills necessary to help us support the economy and the workplace. And of their top five skills, number one is preparing workers for good jobs and ensuring fair compensation. The second one is to ensure workplaces are safe and are healthy. The third is to assure fair and high quality work life environments. The fourth, secure health benefits, and for those not working, provide income security. And then the fifth is produce timely and accurate data on the economic conditions of workers and their families. So those are not only very aggressive goals, but when you consider there are over 300 million people in the U.S., those are goals that are truly awe inspiring. Well, as a result of that, you have to be able to translate this information. And that means that there are going to be a number of skills necessary in the workforce to help make these goals achievable. And then we use these skills to develop our foundation for leadership. So we then pull together these principal skills and put them in a blueprint for you. And that's where our discussion begins. Looking at what are these principal skills necessary to help you in the 21st century workplace. Communication being one of them, negotiation, facilitation, and implementation. Again, communication, negotiation, facilitation, and implementation. Communication, how important is it? It's still the single most important skill to have in the workplace. And not just communication, understanding that face to face communication is still the most important and the most impactful way to be able to make a connection when you are conversing with one person or a group of people. Within communication, though, there are different ways to be able to break down communication. Listening skills are important, and there are different types of listening styles. Considering culture is extremely important when you consider how diverse our country is today. And then, last but not least, interpersonal skills and why those are important in the workplace. So let's take a look at these three in a little bit more detail to give you some ideas to why the skills are important and how they may be used in an HR and OB format. Listening styles. People listen in various ways, and this is probably the single most important skill to have in communication. It is not articulation or the ability to be able to speak. It's more the ability to be able to listen. So people listen for a people oriented type of listening style, which really is concerned with creating relationships and has a sensitivity to feeling. People listen with an action oriented listening style, which has a concern with task and getting things done or taking care of business. They also listen with a content oriented listening style, which has a framework concerned around analysis and then has a sensitivity to detail. And then we also listen with a time oriented listening style, which really looks for efficiency and has an impatience about it. So understanding these listening styles is important, but more important in the 21st century workplace is to understand that you have to have all of these listening styles within your repertoire. So you can't be good at one and not good at the other three. With today's leadership plans that we build, you have to be good at all of these and become a student of the listening game. That's because culturally, we have some natural barriers that exist that we have to overcome when we're looking at leadership in an HR and OB setting. These cultural barriers really have a foundation in our beliefs, our behaviors, our motivations, the habits, traditions, and dynamics that come into play for us, as well as the communication component that comes into play, whether it's verbal, nonverbal, or it has that etiquette or professional degree that we'd like to see. So, taking this discussion a step further, we then need to make sure that we have the right interpersonal skills from a communication standpoint, and we understand what's expected of those interpersonal skills. So you're expected in the workplace to be predictably cooperative, to make your behavior collaborative, to really have kind of a healthy group dynamic in what you do and appreciation, and then always look to become a change agent. And even though there can be and adversity to change, change is constant. So we need to be able to find a way to be able to embrace it. So let's shift gears to negotiation. Negotiation is really imperative in our workplace. Why? Because in negotiation, we can create opportunity. There's a need to always be prepared in how we negotiate. We get the opportunity to build trust and respect among others. We always have options with negotiation, and that's extremely important. We're not fixated on one outcome or solution, there are always options. Communications in itself is important in negotiation. Conflict management becomes something that we have to take a leadership role in, and we have to be flexible. So this really helps us in the way of understanding to then, with our negotiation, if we need be, understand how to facilitate. And facilitation is yet a different skill set. Facilitation is really predicated on how well we can get people to participate and then how well they can develop their skills. Participation is about motivation and goal orientation or the establishment of goals, while skill development is about preparation and then measuring the work that you do. And so, with this facilitation, you have to understand that you're motivating people to participate. And you design an organization where you share this motivation and you build this reward and recognition system that not only is transparent, but that people can appreciate and they can sustain their performance and productivity within. So facilitation, I'll give you a little more of an example. And just the simple example of facilitating a meeting, what comes into play? And so you've got on the left-hand side, the audience, the purpose, where the meeting is going, where it should be going, who are the participants, the decision-making process, the actionable items, and the summarization. And then you start asking yourself questions. Who am I meeting with? Why am I meeting? Where? How are we going to make the decisions? Who are the participants and their roles? How do we close out the meeting for next steps? And you can see on the far right-hand side what are some of the facilitation skills necessary in order to run or facilitate an effective meeting. In implementation, there's a process to implementation that really involves strategy, and we've talked about strategy throughout the entire course, tactics, the how-to of getting something done, which we've discussed as well, and then the actionable steps that are team-oriented, opportunistic, and measurable. So implementation, although it hasn't changed, it's taken on a different role when we look at it from a principal skills blueprint perspective. Here are some definitions that I think may be helpful for you: communication, negotiation, implementation, and facilitation. And so we might ask ourselves, what do we learn or pick up today? Well, when we look at this principal skills blueprint, we need to understand how these elements can help us not only support our HR and OB plan, but also help us from a leadership standpoint to be able to move our organization forward as a whole. Here is your thought for the day. As we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them.